Welcome back to Girl Take the Lead. I'm your host, Yo Canny. Have you ever finished a busy day and thought, I worked hard all day, so why does it feel like I didn't get enough done? Maybe it's because so much of what we do is invisible. The planning, the remembering, the coordinating, the problem solving, the mental load of keeping life moving for yourself, perhaps, and your family. My guest today, Lisa Woodruff, believes we've been thinking about organization of our households all wrong. It's not just about getting organized, it's about learning to lead. Lisa is the founder and CEO of Organize 365 and host of the top rated Organize 365 podcast with more than 24 million downloads. After earning her PhD studying the invisible work of households, she's helping us rethink what it means to be the CEO of our homes. In this conversation, we explore why overwhelm can feel like quicksand, how moving from perfection to excellence can change our lives, and why leading a household may be one of the most important leadership roles we'll ever have. Whether you live by yourself, with a partner, have young children, or caring for aging parents, or are navigating an empty nest, I think you'll find something in this conversation that speaks to you. So let's welcome Lisa Woodruff to Girl Take the Lead. Thanks for being here. So, Lisa, welcome to Girl Take the Lead, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation about your book. And why don't we start, if you would, tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm a very inquisitive questioner, always asking questions. My mom said to me, "What are you doing? Writing a book?" When I was like 12. Now I've written 6 books. So I called her recently. I said, "Hey, you know what? I wrote those books." But I've always been observing, asking questions, analyzing, and my subject matter of my biggest inquisition is our households. Our households, family structures, people who live in households, how we live in our households. And that started by being the oldest grandchild on both sides of the family. My parents were very young, 22, 23. So it was
Mhm.
almost somewhat like I was a little sibling in my dad's family. So I got to see some fun things there. I was a babysitter, so I was in houses and I asked a lot of questions there. Then I got an early childhood degree and I ended up going on home visits for my preschool students and I got to see where they lived. Then I spent a decade as a stay-at-home mom. And then I was an in-home professional organizer for 6 years, and I got to see how hundreds of people spent time in their homes and helped them get organized in Cincinnati, Ohio. And most recently, I just got my PhD, and now I'm looking at how academia looks at our home, both as how we divide the labor between men and women, the economic impact of our households, and on and on.
Mm. And so tell us about your latest book.
So my latest book is called Escaping Quicksand. And I wrote Escaping Quicksand because now that I'm in my almost mid 50s, I can look back at my 40th birthday and the end of my 30s with a little bit less PTSD. Like the end of my 30s was, I mean, it was kind of brutal. And just everything came to a head. The economy was crashing down. My kids had a lot of needs. Our finances weren't good. My parents had gotten divorced. My father passed away. My sister and I needed to settle the estate, and on and on and on and on and on. And there's a lot of longevity in my family. I hope to live to be 100 years old. I have a great
Mhm.
grandmother was 103, grandfather that was
Wow.
102. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But boy, at 39, turning 40, I was like, I don't think I can make it to 41 if I keep living this life on repeat. And so I set out to really change my life when I turned 40. I started this company and yes, I got organized. But looking back in hindsight, the changes I made in my 40s outwardly was I started eating better, taking care of myself, and getting organized. But inwardly, there were some significant mindset shifts that I made that really helped those external changes stick, so to speak.
Mm. So the quicksand,
Yeah.
such a great image for
Yeah.
us to think
Yeah.
about it being quicksand.
Mhm.
And I think you have a great passage in your book. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about what quicksand
Okay.
is about.
The grief of the 40th birthday is the realization that you do not have someone to pull you out of the quicksand. As a matter of fact, your friends are also in their own quicksand. Chants of, I'm so busy and I'll do it later, fill our in person and online conversations. We're all going down in our own unique, hidden ways. And the only other way out of quicksand is to pull yourself up and out. At 39, my arm muscles were for decorative purposes only. They were not functional or strong enough to pull me out of quicksand. Growing muscles is hard. There's no pill to take or switch to flip. Disciplined, consistent effort is the only way forward. I learned that if a person is actually stuck in quicksand, they should remain calm and strategically lean back into a back foot position to spread themselves out over a larger surface area, evenly distributing their weight. I love this visualization because if we panic when we are overwhelmed in our homes, we will sink deeper into the mess. However, if we spread our time out more strategically, we will get out once and for all.
I thought that was so terrific. I mean, what a wonderful way to look at that because we do panic,
Yeah. Yeah, we
right?
do.
That overwhelm comes. And I know that Brene Brown says, you know, when you're in overwhelm, you need to just have a timeout, stop what you're doing. You can't delegate anymore. It's like, what a wonderful image that I'm in quicksand. I'm moving so quickly that I want to get out of it, but I'm going nowhere.
Right, right. And we are swimming in and drowning in so many different kinds of work. Often we think that I am overwhelmed because of the laundry, or I'm overwhelmed because of my kids, or I'm overwhelmed because of the economy. But the truth is, we're overwhelmed by the visible work that we do, the invisible management work that we do, the information that we're holding in our head, that we are our family's Siri and Google, and we need to give that information back to people, the organization and the projects we're dying to find some time to get to, but never seem to rise to the top of our to-do list. Like it's so many different categories of work, and yet we label it all housework. And so we feel like, well, I have some time to do housework or to work on a project. But then I don't know about you, but as soon as I get some time, I'm like, but there are 20 things I want to do at this time,
Yeah.
20 different
Yeah.
things.
Well, what do you think keeps us swimming and not, not being strategic, like
Yes,
not
I think that,
laying full out in the quicksand?
yeah, well, I think for the long time, and even in my 40s, as I got organized and started the company and all those things, that I was successful at home and successful at work. I was still operating from that to-do list mentality. Like everything that my brain could think of, I would capture and then I put in my Sunday basket or I put on a to-do list and then I would time block it and I would get it done. But really, more recently, I've come to realize two things. Number one, there is so much to do that we aren't even capturing on to-do lists or in our Sunday basket, which we'll talk about later.
Mhm.
We're still only doing the work that we surface mentally or someone reminds us of. We aren't strategically thinking like, okay, here are all the roles that a household has to do. Am I making sure I'm doing all of these? And really, it was the growth of Organized 365 from a solopreneur business or a business that just had 1099 contractors into a warehouse with an office with P&L with W-2 employees that I started to learn what it means to run and operate a business. I have a school degree and I was a stay-at-home mom. Like anybody can start a side hustle. But when you're
Mhm.
turning it into a corporation, and I have a corporation that pays royalties and dividends and quarterly taxes and all of these things, in order to continue to be successful in the marketplace, you need to make sure all departments are healthy. And as you step into the role of CEO, you need to make sure that your strategic vision is known by all in your company, that we're really good at eliminating busy work or things that are not going to be profitable or productive, that every part of the company, operations, HR, finance, marketing, sales, has what they need in order to set and achieve the goals, that actually the less goals that you have, the more likely you are to achieve them. And as I started doing that and reducing the goals inside of the company and hiring people with more expertise than myself, I was like, huh, well, the American household is 68% of US GDP. Like it's an economic entity. We don't have any. We don't have any of this kind of planning in households. We don't have any of these kind of systems. Like all of our households are run based on how we saw our parents run their household, what our best friend has just told us when we were talking over, a coffee or a glass of wine, and whatever we saw on Instagram or Pinterest. Like that's not a
Mm,
plan. No wonder we're like chasing our tails and just working from to-do lists. And I was like, okay, we need more. We need to be the CEO of our households. We need to think about our household as the economic entity it is and all of the different kinds of work that we do,
yeah.
which I could go into my new framework if we want to, but all the different kinds of work that we do. And then as a CEO, we need to step away and have strategic time where we think about household operations and housework and information management and ourselves. Because the other thing, and the reason why I'm talking about us as the household CEO, is because CEOs know that when they have a company of employees, that the health of the company is the health of the CEO. The growth of the company is the growth of the CEO. If the CEO isn't growing, learning, if the CEO isn't healthy, then the organization is not healthy. And the same is true in our household.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was also thinking that maybe we do get a formula down. Like the household's going to run like this.
Yeah.
And come hell or high water, you are going to do that. And I caught myself the other day, it was like 92 degrees and we don't have air conditioning, but damn it, I was going to cook in the kitchen. I was going to turn the stove on. I was going to have a protein cooked. And I just about had a heat stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh, look at you. Conditions changed. You didn't change. You could have
Mm-hmm.
easily ordered and takeout and done it a lot differently. You could have had a shower before you did anything, cool off. But I didn't see that I put myself in the quicksand
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't adjust. And I think that's one of the things a CEO has to be really good about is
Yep.
being able to adjust to market conditions or
Yeah,
else
basically,
you can run out of business.
yeah, the only job of the CEO really is to make connections, eliminate bottlenecks for the team, and make decisions. That's it. That's all a CEO does. I mean, they
Yeah.
do it really well and they have to make those key things, but they usually don't make the things, but they're always looking and observing at what's going on out there. What are the threats to the organization? What are the opportunities? And they're surfacing those threats and opportunities while managing and empowering their team to go forward with the vision. The same thing at home. Same thing in our households.
Yeah. No, that's really good because I just sort of think we learn something and we just keep doing it over and over again, no matter what. And we know that's insanity, but it's like we just keep doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So when we keep doing that and we're not taking the ownership there, what emotions do you think we're in? Like guilt, shame? I don't know. What do you see there?
Yeah, I think they're kind of personality and situationally dependent. So I know you mentioned Brene Brown, like that's a great, guilt versus shame and really
Mhm.
diving into that. Um, many myself at the end of my 30s, I was depressed. I went on an antidepressant. I'm not on one now, but it was, oh my gosh, it was amazing to have that opportunity. I've had many family and friends who they just have a lot of anxiety. And anxiety is the number one emotional trait that we see that the overwhelm of the invisible load of housework has on women in academia. That's how we measure it. We measure it through anxiety. And so those are all different ways in which you can label or work on or talk about the negative ramifications around not feeling in control, not having a system, feeling like there's more work than you have the time, capacity, or resources to take care of. For myself personally, when I was reflecting back on my 40s, thinking about it, I'm not a person that falls into a lot of those. I think maybe guilt versus shame was the biggest one that I would fall into. And I
Mm,
labeled it a little bit differently. So the way I labeled it was I saw everyone else around me, or I perceived everyone else around me being more perfect than I was, being better accomplished than I was. You know, as a
Mm.
child, I had dyslexia. We didn't find it till I was 16. So, because we didn't find it till I was 16, I'd been told my whole life, like, you're never going to be able to spell. My sixth grade teacher said to my parents in parent teacher conference, she's just going to have to literally carry a dictionary around with her all the time because she doesn't know how to spell. In eighth grade, my dad took a lot of money because this is like 1980 or early 80s, and he bought me this Franklin speller. It was like a calculator, but it was like for spelling. This before we even had computers, people, and you were able to phonetically type in a word and it would tell you the correct way to spell it. So it was probably a couple $100, which we didn't have, but I was such a terrible speller that they bought this for me. And I used it. I was like, Dad, it's broken. And he's like, well, how are you trying to spell this word? And so I spelled it. He goes, oh my gosh, you can't even spell wrong right. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even spell wrong right. Like, I don't even know how to, like, a dictionary, even this, like, it's like, I mean, I just felt like so broken my whole life. And I always, because I couldn't get all, even A's and B's, I always had this floating C. Like, I wasn't perfect, but everybody else out there was perfect.
Yeah.
And really, when I look back on my 40s, I definitely made a mental shift, whatever you want to call it, from this idea of there is a perfection and I'm not hitting it to I'm a person of excellence. Listen, I have a podcast for a reason because I can talk. But if I have to write it down, we're going to need to have multiple editors. Like there was so much editing in my book. I can't even tell you, but the concepts are all mine. Um, and so when I decided that I was not going to try to perfect the areas in which I am weak and instead really dive into the areas in which I'm unique and analytical about the housework and just really dive into that. I'm excellent in those areas. And even the
Mm.
areas in which I am weak, I give excellent effort. And I stopped judging myself on perfection and started whenever I would think about like, oh, it's not perfect. I can't do it perfectly. I would rephrase and I'd be like, okay, but what can I do? What is the excellent effort I could do with my time, talent, and treasure right now? What can I bring to bear? And so I replaced perfection with excellence. And then I did a podcast on that and started talking about that probably 5, 6, 7 years ago with my audience. And my husband said to me a couple months ago, he said, you know, you used to be a really negative person, um, but you aren't anymore. Like everything's positive. Like even when things go wrong, you're like, oh, it's okay. Here's what we're going to do. Like it just seems to not phase you. And I
Mm.
said, well, when I stopped looking for perfection in myself and others, I stopped judging myself and others. And I started giving everyone around me grace because I just assumed that everyone was also working with the best intention to the best of their ability and giving excellent effort. And so I literally used to be so catty and judgmental, and I had to change a friendship over it just so I could get that out of my life. And now I don't gossip. I don't even think about it.
Right. So it sounds like the emotions that used to get you triggered,
Hmm.
you've been able to pivot and change into something more positive for yourself. Is that kind of what you see there?
Yes, and I realized maybe I went on a little rabbit trail. Like, so how that relates to the household? Like, when Miss Backley says, "How does that relate to the household?" So how this relates to the household is, I would wait until I could perfectly paint a room, and I have never perfectly painted a room.
Ah, okay.
Every single room I painted in, there's something on the ceiling. And my husband or family members come and go, like, you hit the ceiling when you painted it. I go, I know, but it's blue now. Or you could pull down any picture in my house, anyone, doesn't matter, anyone. There's at least two nail holes there, probably five, because I was trying to get it level. But you know what? Nobody sees the nail holes. So
Yeah.
that's an example of I just started doing everything. And I knew it wasn't going to be perfect. Instead of waiting for the perfect, trying to find money to hire someone perfect, accepting that, like, hey, you missed a spot as a judgment on myself, and like, oh, I'll try harder next time. I was like, yeah, I did. Moving on. Like, I'm rubber and you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off me back to you. Like, I don't even take it anymore as judgment. I'm like, doesn't matter. The job's done. Like, you think this house is perfect? Like, the dog just threw up on the floor 5 seconds ago. Like, everything's a mess around here. So it doesn't
It's
matter.
okay.
But the projects are getting done. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Well, one of the things you talked about is tasks,
Yeah.
and you have a nice approach with the Sunday box. You got to tell our listeners about the Sunday box.
Okay, so I created the Sunday basket when my kids were 6 months old and 2 years old. And I just had a never ending pile of to dos, as we always do. But this was 2002, so most of it was in paper. and I put it in a basket. And I started putting everything that I needed to do in this basket and dividing it into slash pockets by project. So like a slash pocket is just a binder insert that's colored, and they have different colors. So phone calls to make would be in one, bills to pay would be in another, things related to one child's medical care would be another, and on and on and on. And so as I have any idea, I can write it down on an index card or a little piece of paper and throw it in that Sunday basket if it can wait till Sunday. Then on Sunday, I put it in the appropriate folder if it's an ongoing project, or I just actually do the action. And I
Uh-huh.
started to create this little operational system out of it where I could, I would do all my bill pay and everything related to meals and all the things that I needed to make my list of people to call, and then just make sure that all my projects were in an ongoing state. Because we have so many tasks. Can I do a little experiment with you?
Absolutely. Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So here's our little experiment. Let's see how you do. I'm coming home from work and I need to change the laundry and change into my clothes for Pilates and grab something to eat. And then I'm going to get back in the car, go to my Pilates class. As I pull in the driveway, I grab my mail out of the mailbox and I start flipping through it as I go into the house because I'm like, okay, I'm only supposed to touch paper once. And I want to make sure that I recycle like what needs to be recycled on the way into the house. And so I go through the mail, I recycle what needs to be recycled. I put the rest on the kitchen counter. I grab something to eat. I go upstairs. I change for Pilates. I get back in the car. I'm driving away. What did I forget to do?
I was so lost in all the tasks. You changed
Yeah.
and you looked at the mail. I don't know. What did you forget to do?
I forgot to change the laundry.
Oh, gosh.
And don't feel bad because I do this often on podcasts. I've only had one podcaster actually know it was after they thought about it for a little bit of time. And I do this on purpose because it was only three things. You just
Yeah.
had to change the laundry, eat, and get the Pilates. But here's the thing, our working memory is very limited in capacity. So
Yeah.
when you got the mail, your working memory dropped changing the laundry. Here's the
Yeah.
thing, snail mail can wait till Sunday. I just grabbed mine. I put it in the Sunday basket. I don't care that I touched my paper twice. That's a 1980s old fashioned productivity tip that actually is not very productive because now I didn't change my laundry. Now,
Yeah.
when I get back from Pilates, I could be late to Pilates, turn around and change the laundry, or I'm going to get back and now I have to either stay up later to change that laundry. See what I'm saying? Like my
Yeah.
whole day is screwed up because I didn't want to touch the paper once. And I was going through mail, which is like other people's priorities, like email
Yeah.
is other people's priorities. We have a plan for what we're doing all day long. When our brain is like, hey, when's the next time you're going to get a haircut? You don't need to stop right now and figure that out. Like you're not getting it today and you can't get into the hairdresser before Sunday anyway. Write yourself a note, put it in the Sunday basket. And the more that we learn to have our brain surface any ideas it wants and write down the notes, like these are just the ones I wrote down last hour, and throw them in the Sunday basket, then you could do them during that time when you are planning and calendaring and that kind of thing, not stopping the plan that you have so that you are derailed on your regular plan. That's
So
what the Sunday
great.
basket does.
That is so great. Yeah. I just sort of think like that could have been such a lifesaver.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. You talk about stop hiding your invisible work and take center stage.
Yeah.
Invisible work. I had to think about that, what that meant. And you do a great job. Do you mind reading a little bit more from your book about that?
No, not at all. This is called house, period, work, period. We all have perceived notions about gender roles and value ascribed to unpaid work. In my 20s and 30s, I took my job as a stay at home wife very seriously. In addition to the obvious care of my children, I viewed the cost saving work I was able to do while I was home as income producing labor. In this way, I reduced the income our family needed at the time. As my children grew older, household operational efficiencies allowed me to add on part time income generating work as well. Most academic studies show negative effects on women's well being resulting from invisible household labor. However, there are two studies that paint a different picture. Researchers Lee and Tang found that when a woman's role in the household and her expectations are matched, as mine were as a stay at home mom, there are no negative effects on a woman's well being. I embraced my role as household manager and enjoyed the responsibility of running my household in my 20s and 30s. In my 40s, I needed to reallocate the work I had done as a stay-at-home mom because my paid work removed me from the day-to-day operations of the household. Today, I still manage the household operations, but I just don't do all the labor. Another interesting academic study defined the unpaid work of running a household as the invisible family load. The study's authors were able to categorize the role of the household manager into three distinct categories of mental work: cognitive, managerial, and emotional. While emotional work had a negative effect on women's well being, cognitive and managerial work was neutral or positive. Taken together, these two studies support my lived experience. When I focused on the managerial processes in my household, I feel more purposeful and my household runs more smoothly. Our emotions, family dynamics, and hormonal fluctuations are less in our control. The more I'm able to cognitively think through scenarios and establish better management of my time and physical household, the more capacity I have for my family and my own emotions. In this way, self-care is cognitive and managerial, not just an emotional feeling of well-being. Our routines, habits, and environment support our relational and emotional selves. As you think through and create supportive systems for your days, you will unlock more capacity for the unpredictable life events that demand your best self. Establishing routine, supportive household management practices helps us support the members of our household we serve. In this way, we are working on our households and not in our households.
Oh, so good. This idea too, I thought it was of value to walk around and get as much done as I could. And it didn't matter whether anybody knew
Mhm.
what I was doing. I've just started asking for help at, with my adult children.
I know, right?
It's like, you know what? Father's Day is coming up. Why don't you
He's
guys
your
take
father, not mine.
you guys take ownership of that?
Yeah.
And and they're just they went, okay, yeah, sure. And I thought, oh my gosh, this idea of
Hmm.
letting them do it, let them, like, okay, Mel Robbins, we're kind of let them.
Yes.
But also being making those invisible contributions,
Hmm.
not like make them visible, like share them,
Hmm.
bring them out in
Yeah.
the open. Just don't try and be as efficient as you can. I think
Right.
one of the wonderful things you're helping us see is that as the CEO, we can delegate some of that. We can ask for help on other things. We can find people with more skill. Definitely have people with more skill than me in a lot of areas when it comes to the house. Um, and that will help us in this quicksand.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my grandchildren live with me, my daughter and grandchildren. And so we've got a 4-year-old and a 5-month old. And, my daughter obviously is like, yeah, I'll take any help you want to give. So I'm always like, give me the baby, I'll take the 4-year-old and we'll go swimming or whatever. And because the 4-year-old was the only child in the household for a long time with a mother and two grandparents, we tended to do a little bit too much for him. And so he's like 3, and they're like, why isn't he dressing himself? And we're like, dressing himself? Because there's always like an adult to dress him. We just, and he didn't care. He's a boy. He's like, yeah, dress me. That's great. And so now he's like, help me put my shoes on. I'm like, nope, you can put your shoes on. And oh my goodness, if you haven't been around a 4-year-old boy lately, and you want to go somewhere, you better block off 20 minutes just for the shoes and going to the bathroom before we leave and the whole thing. So you have to be really patient with little kids because you want them to be self-sufficient.
Mm,
And when my kids were in high school, they didn't drive until they were 18 and they went to 2 different schools and it wasn't public school. So I was driving them 25 hours a week. And yeah, you do a lot of things just because you don't want to deal with the back talk. It's going to
mm,
be faster. You have a more efficient way to do it. There's so much to do anyway. There's not time for you to sit around
right,
and wait 20
right.
minutes for them to do whatever they're going to do. And so, for productivity reasons, we just take on more and more and more. And to be honest, like when I tell my adult kids, like, hey, how about if you do this? They're like, I have my own household to run. You run yours. They're like, they don't want to like come back and help run mine. I was like, okay, good point. I can see where that's coming from. So there's just a lot of work to do, and we do tend to just gravitate. I just know how to do it. I'll
Yeah,
just get it done. I'll just do it one more time. I'll just get it done.
yeah,
And we really should share the load, share the
yeah.
burden.
Because
Those
I
are the
think
uncomfortable.
one of the things the people around us love us and they don't want to see us overwhelmed and in the quicksand and
Yeah.
irritable and snappy because we're overly tired or whatever. It's just, it's worth it to
Yeah.
help communicate. So, one of the things I'm interested, you mentioned a couple generational differences, but what do you see there generational? Do you have hope that the younger people doing households, whether no matter which gender they identify with, will be better CEOs about the household?
Yeah. Okay. I have three thoughts about this. One, I really looked at the different ways in which generations looked at physical things. Like it's so easy to get things. I could put something in my Amazon cart and it'll be at the front door in, 3 to 5 hours. Like it's insane how fast we can get things. And I think back in the 80s where my friends, not my parents, but my friends' parents stood in line overnight around the Toys R Us store in order to get their kids a Cabbage Patch doll. I never got one. But their parents would stand in line for like 14 hours to get their kids a Cabbage Patch doll. So the effort that it takes to actually acquire physical items is so different for current generations than it was for past generations. So we obviously have a different value on physical items. And so that can come to a head when you're in storage areas and grandma wants to keep it, but grandchild is like, I don't even know why you have any of this, burn it all down, and then there's kind of like this flippant attitude or people feel disrespected. The kids feel like, why are you putting this stuff upon me? And the older generation is thinking like, why don't you recognize the value of the time and the money that I put into this thing that I saved all these years for you? And once we
Mhm.
could see the perspective the person has on the item, truly what the younger generation wants is the memory, and the older generation wants to feel valued for their contribution. And you
Mm.
can do both in cleaning out a storage room. So if you let grandma tell the story and the grandchild is like, that's so awesome. Can I take a picture of it and put it in this book of all these memories of these things? And then we're going to sell this and it's going to become whatever, a piece of jewelry, or it's going to go to the grandchildren's schooling or something like that. Then everybody's feeling valued in that transition of that physical item because that physical item has some representation. Also, when I was getting my PhD, the first research study I did was I was trying to create a definition of housework for the American population. And I was looking at it through the lenses of different generations. So I had millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers in my population. And across the board, everyone defined housework the same way. It's only three categories: food, cleaning, and laundry tasks. Those are the things that we universally, as Americans, ascribe to housework. However, I asked these populations some additional questions like, do you think it's essential housework or not? And what I found was what I thought would be the case was that younger people would not think as many things were housework because, I mean, we live more modern lives. We have a lot more machines that do things for us. And I just don't see young people slaving away at housework. You know what I mean? And I was thinking older people would be like, oh, yeah, here's my whole list of housework, especially since studies will show that when you retire, women add 6 hours of housework a week to their calendar. I'm like, what is this additional housework they're doing? Anyway, I don't even want to know. I'm scared now of that. So I assumed if
I
they're
haven't done
doing more
that.
housework, that they would identify more. It's not the case. Millennials actually identified more household tasks, followed by Gen X, followed by baby boomers. So they actually identified more work as they thought was essential, which I thought was interesting. But the last thing I will say about this, as far as generations go, uh, my one concern or caution for younger generations is that older generations, you lived in much more of a multi-generational household like I'm living in with my grandchildren now, and I see kind of a resurgence of that, and more in close proximity. So you had more visual examples of what housework was, and you could quickly ask, a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, whatever, about housework, and you just kind of like learned it through osmosis.
Right.
um, and we are very much more isolated now. And so, how does the youngest generation really learn how to do housekeeping if they are not in close proximity to other family members? That's one question. And then you also mentioned about male, female, and gender and equity. We are seeing that there is more equitable division of both visible and invisible housework in younger generations. However, soon as that baby comes in the mix, it's like the man forgot he did any of the chores. Like he doesn't even take on any more parenting chores. They stopped doing some of the household chores they used to do. It's the craziest thing. I was talking actually to another academic about it, not scientifically, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." Like, you know, he they were coupled and he was thinking about other couples. And he's like, "Yeah, we all like sharing the housework, but so and so had a baby and all of a sudden he stopped doing even the housework." And the wife was working. And he's like, "Why do we do that?" I said, I don't know why we do it. I'm just like, yeah, that's what we're observing. Like once that parenting thing goes into the list, the woman's list gets longer. I'm not really sure what's happening there, but it is observational.
Huh. That would be, I can't wait for you to do your next research project on that. That would be so
Excellent.
interesting to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else? I know you mentioned something about a framework. Do you want to
Mm,
talk a little bit
sure.
about that? Because I'm trying to think of what else we didn't cover that maybe we should before we end our episode.
Yeah, so this framework isn't in the Escaping Quicksand book, but it's the new book that I'm writing for next year. Now that I have completed my PhD, I can officially start doing my own research. And I want to ground it in a new theory. So, my theory is going to be the Productive Home CEO theoretical framework. And it's the 5 levels with which we operationalize and the complete levels of how to run our household. So the first level is the maid. This is where you're like the 1980s maid, not a sexy maid, like the old long maid with the hat. You're Cinderella, basically. And you're doing the laundry, you're doing everything food related, and you're doing the cleaning. This is essential. We have to do this work our entire lifetime. The second level is where we become the professional organizer. And in the professional organizer level, we start to organize our environment to match the phase of life we're in, which gives us back more time because we're not looking for things. And these are the visible things that we do in households that most people think of when I say I work for Organize 365. They say, "Oh, yeah, I need you to come to my house and get me organized." I don't do that anymore. You got to do it yourself, but I do have the course. So that's our visible organizing. Then we go to level 3. Now we're in invisible work. And this is where we're the household manager. This is where the Sunday basket comes into play. And this is where we manage our projects and all the visible work that we need to do and any other constituents in our household in order to get that work done. The fourth level is information management. This is when we realize that, oh, we can't like leave town because we get 18 messages. "Hey, mom, where's this? What's the answer to this?" Because the repository for where all that information is our brain. So we can't go on vacation because there is no repository for people to look for. So we're like,
Uh,
okay, what's in my brain that the family needs to know? What's on the computer that needs to be accessible? How do we create kind of like a family information infrastructure? And then the final level, level 5, is when we promote ourselves to CEO. We become more strategic. We make sure that we are on the list of priorities because as a CEO, I know the health and the growth of the CEO determine the health and the growth of my company. The same is true in the household. If mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. It's kind of like that at a more elevated level. Like if you are growing and thriving and learning and giving yourself some time to be thinking about your household's goals and everyone in the household growing to their full potential, you then can look down at those other levels and even eliminate some of that work in order to have more capacity for the CEO.
wow, that sounds so great. So this is your next book. You'll
Yeah,
have to
it'll be a
come back.
podcast. I know it'll be a podcast series this summer on Organize 365. You can listen to it. And then I'll flesh it out into a book. And then we are going to base all of our academic studies on this framework.
So let's tell everybody how they can follow you and find you and your podcast for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, thank you. So the company website is organize365.com. The podcast is called Organize 365, available everywhere that you listen to podcasts. And I'm most active on Instagram under Organize 365.
Cool. Well, I ask all my guests, what you would tell your 20 something self today?
If I had to go back and tell I love when people ask different ages. So 20, I was still in college. I think about my daughter at 20, she had already had her first child. So I'm going to say that whenever you find yourself in your first living on your own, that might be 18, it might be 25, it might be 30, like you've left your child at home, like you're in your first apartment, your condo, your house, whatever. And you're like, you shut the door, you're like, yes, I'm home. Like that's the person I'm going to be. What would I tell her? I would tell her, um, this, you are now a household manager. Like you are now in charge of your household and you're adulting. This is an important job. It is a job. It's going to take time. You could put your time, talent, and treasure into this job because you are going to be living with yourself the rest of your life and in some kind of a dwelling. So it's okay to invest time and money and resources into growing yourself and your systems so that they support all of the phases of life that you're going to be in. Just give her permission to do that.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Or him.
And lastly, I know you had a chance to go to the store and you picked something for yourself. And I also have made you something, which, as a follow up, listeners, you'll have to just sort of see some of the posts to see what I've made for uh, reflecting this episode. So hopefully Lisa will like it and will want it in the store. But um, what you picked was trust your gut. You know what to do. It's so
Yes.
great. Thank you very much for picking that one. It is one of the more popular ones. I think it's because you're telling us to really listen to ourselves.
Yeah, there have been so many times, and I would say this to anyone listening. You know the answer. So often you know the answer. I think so many times where I was like, I need to make this decision. And it seemed like whatever decision I was making was counteractive. This is a great example. We were doing supplement testing on my kids. It was 2007, 2008. And I had my son on a supplement and they said, take him off of this supplement. I was like, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure he needs to be on it. They're like, no, we're looking like they were running all the labs. They're like, we're looking at all his symptoms, whatever. Like, there's no way he needs to be on that supplement. I'm like, all right. So I took him off. I was like, I don't think so, but okay. 1 week later, they call me back. They go, put him back on. And I said, do you have the results? I go, not enough, but we know he needs that one. I don't know how you knew it, but he needs that one. Put him back on. As just an example over and over and over again. Like I was eating right, doing all the right things, gaining so much weight. And I was like, this makes no sense. Why am I gaining weight? And I ran through some of my old tests and reviewed the information in those. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Because I don't do well with a high protein, high fat diet. I do well with a high carb diet. Have you ever heard of that? No. You would only know that if you've done testing. But I've always said, whenever I go extreme on protein, I'm just exhausted. I don't have energy. I can't do anything. My body needs carbs. My DNA needs carbs. Like, even if everyone out there is getting a different result in the same exact situation, it just might not be true for you. So trust your gut. You know what to do.
I loved it. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay. What a thoughtful conversation with Lisa. I'm so grateful she joined us. I came away thinking that leadership doesn't stop when we leave work for the day. Some of our most important leadership happens at home, in the choices we make, the systems we create, and the grace we give ourselves when life doesn't go according to plan. Here are 3 takeaways. 1, being the CEO of our household doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It means stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, making thoughtful decisions, and remembering that asking for help is part of leadership, not a sign of weakness. 2, perfection is a heavy burden. I love Lisa's shift from striving for perfection to pursuing excellence. We stop waiting for everything to be perfect. We create room to make progress, learn, and move forward. And 3, trust yourself. Whether it's organizing your home, navigating uncertainty, or making everyday decisions, your lived experience matters. You probably know more than you think you do. Thank you again, Lisa, for reminding us that organization is a learnable skill and that leading our households begins with leading ourselves. And be sure to join me next time for a new soundbite inspired by this conversation called When Anxiety Takes the Wheel. We'll explore why uncertainty so often leads to anxiety and how trust, hope, and faith can help us take the next indicated step. Until then, be well, be brave, and keep taking the lead. Bye.